Yes. Okay, we're gonna call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. and I'm gonna do roll call real quick. Robert is gonna be showing up late. Merle,
Here.
Heidi, here. Glenn,
Here.
Kelsey, here. Jenny's here. Crystal. She should be dialing in, but we'll go ahead and continue with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first, work session item is attendance matters and chronic absentees and response.
Yeah, so back in September, I went back and had to go back and figure out what date it was. I think it was September 30th. Our vice principals came before you to present to you their ideas and plan for addressing the concerns we had and have around chronic absenteeism. And so they have done some amazing work throughout the fall and winter that I'm excited for them to share with you. And so I will, I don't know, you guys want to scoot up or how you guys want to do this or just from right there? I'll come to the table. Anyways. So their presentation, and you've already had a copy of it, is about 5 or so slides about.
Hey, Dan, can I interrupt you for a minute? All I see is a Zoom screen.
That would be correct, because you're sharing the screen so that, like, the only thing that would change that is, Crystal, you might be able to change your settings so that the speaker, you can see like the speaker aspect of it. Or the
So
gallery.
okay, there you go. Thank you.
So about midway through their presentation there, they have a data spreadsheet, and after they're done explaining that to you, I think that might be a good point in the meeting, just to kind of pause and ask questions about how those processes run, because I'm very impressed with it, and I'm just expecting you to be very impressed with it too. So with that, I will, no pressure, no pressure. All right, I'll turn it over to our team there.
Oh, good evening, everyone. For our attendance presentation tonight, to start off with a couple of our slogans that we're using this year. And we do a lot of work around Attendance Matters, which is a statewide program around attendance. We incorporate some of their elements with regards to what we do on a monthly, daily basis. You go to the next slide. Our slogan this year for attendance is "Be here, be awesome." We want all students to be here every day, because they're awesome. And so if we look at our historical data, you saw this slide last time in September. We just updated it with our current numbers for this current school year 24-25. And as you can see there, as it says there, the COVID years aren't available, so you'll see a gap in the data there. With regards to, and I'll just start off with the elementary. With the primary, as you can see, a few years ago, we were at 40%, and we've gotten all the way up to 68% here so far this year. And I predict that number will increase before the end of the year, because we're seeing a trajectory up with regards to that percentage here at the primary school. And similar to the intermediate, well, we've gone up 10% since 21-22. We've only gone up 2% since last year, but it's still an increase. And again, we expect those numbers to continue to increase by the end of the year.
And that percentage is percentage of regular attenders.
This is regular
90% or higher.
So this is the students who are attending 90% or more of the school year. Yes.
The middle school is sitting at 69% right now, trending upwards. It'll probably continue that way. Just right now, we're in the thick of cold and flu and all the germ season. So once we get out of that in spring, I know that that's gonna increase even more.
And high school's also seeing some growth, we're just almost to 65%. I do remember also when we presented in September, we didn't have last year's data either, we were a couple days away from it, so that's been updated as well. But that positive growth all the way around, up to about 68% district-wide, from 62% last year.
And I think one of the statistics to really point out here is that primary, because we've talked about how this is just about, there's a lot of habit forming behaviors that we're trying to implement here. And so when you get those primary students going from 55% regular attenders to 68% regular attenders, we're starting to create really good habits at the primary level. So really want to emphasize that point. All right.
Okay, so this is the spreadsheet that we use. So this is an example from the middle school, but every school has a spreadsheet just like this that we use in our attendance teams. So this has every single student in the middle school on it. And we keep kind of a running attendance rate from year to date. So every year, every 2 weeks when we meet, we add another column, and that's their updated percentage for what their attendance is for the year. So we keep some basic information on there, like their homeroom teacher or their advisory teacher, Spanish speaking or things like that. So we know when we're sitting in our attendance team, when we're dividing up who's gonna contact and how we're gonna contact, we have that information readily available, so we don't have to spend time searching for it. And then we just track interventions. So what you can't see as the spreadsheet goes farther, every 2 weeks we have intervention columns, like those columns repeat so that we can kind of see what we've done and then what we're gonna do moving forward. So if things are trending up, then we kind of change the interventions. If they're getting worse, then we get more severe interventions in terms of like home visits and things like that. And then we can track who's responsible. And then once those contacts have been made, the person responsible goes back in and puts in notes of like information they found out, that would be helpful for us to help. And if we need to connect them with some sort of support that we didn't know prior that they needed, or if there was like an illness or something that was, something we just didn't know, or a family vacation and they hadn't called to let us know they were leaving, anything like that, we can put it in there so we know that for the next 2 weeks, if things change or don't change, things like that.
Any questions on the spreadsheet? Everyone?
I don't know if it's so much a question, just a comment, like, I can't impress how commendable having an obvious blueprint going forward. I mean, these are movements in the right direction in every building. And that's, to me, that's super impressive compared to what we came from. I mean, and I would include everybody in admin from you at the top to, everybody who's had a hand in this, because obviously it's been a really focused and kind of deliberate effort. And great job.
And obviously, we're the representatives of that, but yeah, it's our counselors, our secretaries, our homeschool contacts. Teachers, I mean, it really spans the gamut of all of our staff participating in this and helping those improvements happen.
And I think what's really impressive, having attended most of their meetings throughout the fall, that I really want to highlight is their ability to what I would call touch every student, especially at the primary and intermediate level, where I don't know, Michael, the first couple of meetings, an hour, maybe talking about 10 students, and then by December, January, they were able to cover 90 students in like 40 minutes. To be able to, because they have data to tell them, is the student trending in the right direction? Okay, yes, okay, we'll see how they are in 2 weeks. No, what are we going to do now? And they've got all this infrastructure built into where they can drop down and go, okay, so who's going to call? Because it's trending in the wrong direction. And so the system's there, so where they can go through, especially at those younger levels, and I think at the older 2 students level, now they can prioritize a little bit better. So if, for example, if you're in high school and let's say you're at 80% attendance, so there's gonna be more students to maybe try to troubleshoot. So where do we spend our time? So maybe now there's a separate secondary data to say, well, if they're 80% in passing all their classes, let's focus on 80% and not passing classes, so that there's a little bit more strategic intervention happening at the middle and high school. But it's in part because you have this data sitting right in front of you telling you which direction to go. So and they created all of this, so they just did an amazing job of pulling this data together. Maybe a little bit of frustration with how we get the data to fill and, a little bit of work in progress, but yeah, great job.
Heidi, you had something to say?
Yeah, when you say the person responsible, who is that in a lot of cases?
It depends on the situation. Our counselors have a lot of conversations with kids. In our building for the middle school, I have individual meetings with students that are anywhere between like 70 and 80% attendance. When that's their average, we kind of meet together. If they're Spanish speaking, or we know they might have some hardships, our family advocate is the one that builds that connection with them and has those conversations. Stacy and I will split, kids, whatever's left over.
But on here it says like homeroom teacher, is it ever a teacher or is it usually at a different level?
It depends. That's information for us to have in terms of like, so when we look at that really quick, I know which teachers are our special education teachers and have certain students in their homeroom, so that tells me right away what sort of picture I'm looking at that I might not already know. And then looking at, like, there's times when we do reach out to homeroom teachers and say, what have you noticed about this student? Have they communicated anything that we don't know, especially if we're having a hard time getting hold of home or anything like that, and they can help us in that way.
And the elementary is very similar, exactly what Lindsay said with regard to how we approach it and who is kind of the person responsible for that action, depending on the methods. A lot of times, most of the time, an administrator and a counselor will go do home visits. We need to teach alone generally, and so responsibilities like that.
I would just add that, sometimes it's, who has that best relationship, maybe the student or the family. Some of our teachers been around a long time and really know the family. Or where else can we leverage? Like, it might be somebody from the committee making that contact home, but we might lean on a coach or a homeroom teacher or something to have a conversation with the kid, maybe learn a little bit more.
Any other questions about the spreadsheet?
I like data.
That's great.
All right.
All right, so kind of what is working, one thing that we did fairly recently was that we shared each of our spreadsheets across all of our teams. And the real reason we saw the need for that was we've got students across multiple buildings. And sometimes those patterns are the same, maybe within the family, but sometimes they're not. We can think of a case where we've got a high school student whose attendance percentage is fairly significantly lower than their middle school siblings. And so that helps us know like something's different with their scenario. It's not necessarily just the bus or some of those kinds of things. So that's helped a lot, just to be able to know and for us to even collaborate across that and coordinate. So they're not getting 3 phone calls. Maybe it's like, hey, one level can kind of call the family, share that information across the board. So some major things happening. Of course, it's just that increased partnership with families. Even maybe where there's not growth for individual students in their attendance, we're learning more. We're starting more conversations. We're opening that door and building that partnership. So sometimes it is maybe an underlying health issue we didn't know about, and that helps us understand why their attendance is there, but also what support might they need on the days they are there. So, those are a few of those. You guys can obviously jump in. And just, the process is working. Like you've seen the results. It's getting there. We're getting a lot more efficient and effective, as Superintendent Bush said. We're gonna be that much better in position as the year goes on and starting fresh next year as well. Kind of jump in right away in September. We built the system this year.
You got one more slide?
Yeah, so, moving forward, things that we're still considering or needs. We are still seeing potential for some alternative programs for students. Where that traditional one size fits most school system doesn't work for all. And so, we don't know what that looks like, what that could be, but we know there's a need there. There's an ongoing need. We do have a number of students and families that talk about mental health obstacles being what's keeping them from school, just not feeling well enough to be here, not just physically, but emotionally. To be able to work with our counselors, that's great, but do we have some resources with our counselors, our homeschool contacts to maybe help families navigate getting support outside of school or within the school system? And wellness supports kind of ties right into that. And, trying to think about some of those community-wide campaigns, that was something we just talked about at our last meeting. I don't know if one of you have a little more to add to that.
Well, community-wide right now would be awesome as we work to get kind of signage in place and some of the promotional material with regards to the slogan. We do send flyers out seasonally on a regular basis, and especially coming up here in spring for like an end of the year push as well. So that's part of the community-wide campaign, but moving forward, we'll also need to address it on a kind of a larger scale, so to speak, more district-wide and community-wide.
Thank you. We can round robin. Robert, you kind of came in the middle, but any thoughts about?
Hey, good job. Wow. Well, thank you.
Merle?
I had a little trouble hearing, but it looked good to me. I agree that we're doing the right thing and it's working and we're going in the right direction.
Heidi?
Yeah, appreciative and impressed with this. Thanks. It's obvious that ducks are getting in a row and things are moving forward and it's really great to see. I do have a question. How does this affect our funding? If somebody is a partial attender? And do we get less money if they're a partial attender or?
If their FTE is less than one, so at the high school, there's 7 periods, so if they go 3 periods or less, then we would only get a half of an FTE if that's how they're slated. If they're supposed to be here and they're coming here and there, we still get the full amount.
Oh,
It's
okay.
when they are unenrolled for 10 days or more. On the 11th day, we have to take them out, and then we don't get funding until they get back.
Okay, that's it. And that 11th day can be like 1 day here, 2 days there when it comes to 10 days?
No.
No,
Or is that
consecutive.
10 in a row, the
10
11th
consecutive,
day.
okay, all right. I should know that like that.
It's a lot of different things.
I guess just looking ahead to the next step, I'm assuming this program that you built, it's obviously working. But it's gonna plateau out at a certain level. Is there plans to kind of maintain that same level of intensity or is there plans to sunset it? Maybe that's not a question for you guys, but so much.
I mean, the part I would answer is not to sunset it, but kind of like Superintendent Bush said, where do we maybe get more intentional with some different data points? Again, your attendance is here, you're passing everything versus not. Or there's some other factors like that we might consider as we think about the intensity of the support and intervention.
But we're still gonna continue to meet regularly throughout the year, and we're not gonna stop any of attendance team meetings.
Yeah,
So
that's a good thing. It seems like a good thing to me, so.
Kelsey?
It's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I like the underlying context of like, I see you, I can see parents, I see you're not gonna hide. Yeah. Great job. Thank you.
Crystal, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. I'll interrupt.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right. I told Linda that she didn't have to move out from behind the computer, so we're kind of gonna just be like this. And so we wanted to at every meeting, every work session, give you an update of where we're at in terms of budget timelines and decisions. So this is a excerpt from the presentation you've seen before. And so I will cover the first two and then hand it off to Linda from there. So we have completed our staff meetings. They did have to get rescheduled because of the inclement weather. And so we finished with the high school and primary on last Thursday versus the 13th. So we finished those on the 20th. Really want to appreciate the staff members for understanding that we're delivering a tough message. They asked tough questions, but they were very kind. They were very considerate. And then they, asked, what could we be doing? And so, really a credit to our staff. We have finalized the seniority lists. We did have some corrections to make with classified staff that I think are ready to go now, and if we kind of get if we get a go ahead from the licensed staff. We'll be making those public this week, I would anticipate. So once we make sure that all the information is accurate to the best of our knowledge.
Just, so when you finalize that, do you give it to the union first? Do you just send it
Yes.
out at the same time as you give it to the union or?
So we've shared it with the union, and we're very thankful we've done that. They've found some things, they've asked some questions. They've collected data over the years to say, hey, we think this one you might be wrong here on this one. And so it's allowed us to have another set of eyes, another double check on it. I think we got the green light from classified today after making some corrections. I will check with UNME tomorrow. Barring any, requests, questions or corrections, we would then make it available. And we will also be sending it to our administrators first. We want to get the corrections done. So those steps are done. And so Linda, do you want to take from there?
Yes, and like Dan said, the classified did share it with their executive team today, right after school, and they're okay with everything. So that one is done and ready to go, but we'll send them out together when we get the license. Okay. We had hoped when we were going around and having our staff meetings that maybe we could get a finalized list of staff to be retained by March 7th. I'm not seeing that as being a final list. We might get a list out by March 7th of cuts we are sure of, but we won't be final. There's too many moving pieces. The state school fund number should be to us by Monday, March 3rd, which is a big day for us, for everybody in the state, as to how much we believe we'll get for our state school funding. And that will, then I can compare it to what I thought it might be to what they're saying it will be, and see if we go up or down or stay about the same or where we're at with that. I'm gonna remind you again that when I used the estimator, it had last year's carve outs. And we don't know what this year's carve outs are gonna be for that, and it could change everything. We also used an estimated amount of students, basically ADMW. And if that fluctuated a lot by the estimates that other districts put in, that's gonna change everything too. So, we could have a swing of a couple 100,000 one way or the other, easy. So we're really holding. I'm kind of holding my breath. I'll die if I hold it till then. Myself and many other business managers in the state are really looking forward to getting the number. We do have a little bit of news that feels that it's going in the right direction for us. So there's a couple Senate bills, or House bills that are going through for high cost disability and for special education caps, and they are moving forward. The special education cap, where we get 11% of our special education cost, an additional amount. They'd like to move that up to 15, and it has passed one place. I don't remember where.
I don't remember whether you.
It's
So,
moving in the right-
Yeah.
It's moving in the right direction,
Yeah.
and so that's a really good thing. They're talking about putting an additional 200 million into the high cost disability amount that we get. But they're not, well, let me go back. The first amount, that's different money, not your state school fund money. The high cost disability, they haven't told us if it's a carve out of the state school fund or not, but they're looking for another 200 million. That would bring up our reimbursement rates to around 80% with the numbers they know right now, versus if we don't get it, about 30% of our costs. So it's huge if we could get a share of that. It's not gonna be probably not even $100,000, but it's money, so it'll help no matter what it is. The other thing is that there have been some meetings that have been positive about the PERS rates. There's a bucket of money of about between 160 and 170 million. The number changes every time I talk to somebody. That may be dispersed for this biennium only to school districts to bring their PERS rates down. Originally, they wanted to spread it out over 10 years or more, and we said, well, then, okay, so we all got $58, what's the point? So when they said, okay, what if we did for the biennium? Now they are in talks with Milliman, the actuarial, for PERS and all that. The issue with that is that it takes an amendment to a bill, and that would not be known until the end of May. So, again, you know, could be good news, but it really won't know.
So is that like a one-time buy down?
Just a one-time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see. They told us it could be up to 1.6% reduction, but everybody's different because of side accounts.
Yeah.
And our guru in the state, Carol Samuels, believes that's way too high, that she doesn't think
She
it's
doesn't
have that effect at all. So we're waiting on that one. Can't get too excited about that one. The first revenue forecast for the state, not the first, but the February one is coming out this week on Wednesday. That's not the deciding one, because another one comes out in May, but those are pretty big. We're all watching those closely because they have a new company doing this, a new person doing this, and they're doing it completely different than where they've been done, the way it's been done before. The governor and the legislature are tired of all the kickbacks and their rebates, and so they're trying to be closer. Well, when you are closer, that also means the fluctuation can go the other way pretty easily. So we're waiting to see where those go to. I think that's all I have. Did I miss anything? No. I'll finish then the rest of this slide. We have told everyone about the purchase order cutoffs. That's really for general fund money. If there's grant money to be spent, then they'll continue buying, but it'll really slow down what is happening in the general fund, which is what we want to stop so we can save some money. And we're having our talks with the unions, as Gavin said. We have a meeting with the classified on Wednesday after school. So we're gonna get started with negotiations, also talk about the MOUs we have on the table right now and see if they voted and where they're at with those things. There is some negative bills going through that could affect us. And we're hoping that they get stalled and don't pass, but they're to do with substitutes. There's one that says that substitutes can get medical insurance and they can call out their home district. So if somebody thinks North Marion is pretty good, they could call. If they sub for us at all the prior year, then they could, it's just a ridiculous bill. We've put in our 2 cents worth into why we think it doesn't make any sense at all. Our third party does offer health insurance benefits. There's a couple in the state that do if you have enough hours, so we're not sure where this is coming from. So, well, we know where it's coming from, we just don't know why they want to do that. So that one could be pretty negative. What's the other one? Oh, the other one is just the process if you want to use a third party and putting more red tape into it than needs be. So I think that's everything. Any questions for Dan?
I'll start with Crystal. Do you have any questions on this?
No, I think I'm okay. So when will so we're expected to see the final list in the end of March? Is that what I'm hearing?
Which list, as far as the staffing reductions?
Yeah,
I would not give a final date on that one, probably, maybe early April if we want. I mean, obviously, what we've been saying to people is to staff is accuracy is really important.
right.
And also trying to get staff notified if there is to be a layoff. So I think that second one may actually in some ways be a little bit tougher because then you're starting to get down to, is that enough of a reduction? I don't know if you would agree with that, Linda.
Yes, I think, phase one could be out by mid-March, but after that, not sure when the next phase would go out. And one of the things that you might find confusing, and Dan has explained this to the staff, is about the March 15th deadline for contract renewal versus if you're on the cut list. I'll let you go into that.
Yes.
Oh, I read your email on that, so I don't need an explanation.
Yeah, on the email that went out to staff, so I think we're all good there,
Okay.
so.
So when exactly is the last day that staff will be notified? Do we have that?
I know.
All right, thanks.
Lynn,
No, I'm good, thanks.
Heidi? Merle?
No question, no.
Robin? Okay.
The only thing I will just, I think that little part about the sped and the PERS pieces to this is the fact that some of that changed. But definitely changed between the 10th and the 20th. And in some cases, it changed between the 20th meeting at 7 o'clock and the 20th meeting at 3:30, where, as the legislature is churning out and we get, I presented Linda information at 7:10 on the morning of the 20th, and then she had an update to it that afternoon. So it's this ever moving piece of, whenever the legislature's in session, so. All right. So, I think it's always a little interesting to prepare a pre-evaluation report here. So what I've tried to do is, because Crystal did share with me the form that you've been provided with, that is, I think so. Crystal, yes, no? I saw a confused look.
Yes, I have it ready to email right now. The reason why I
Oh.
haven't emailed it out quite yet was I wanted to make sure they saw the superintendent pre-evaluation report before completing the form. So
Got it.
literally I'm pressing the send in about 5 minutes.
Perfect, okay, all right, so. There's, I believe, 8 standards that OSBA has, and so what I've tried to do is, because there's so much educational verbiage in this stuff, and so I've tried to kind of break each standard down for you. In terms of at least how I read that. So if you look, and I'm not gonna read every one of these slides, so I'm gonna be skimming through some of this, so. I'll walk you through a few and then we'll start skimming. All right, so if we go to the second slide, well, no, one more, I got one more thing to say. So teamwork makes the dream work, because no superintendent does all 8 of these standards. It takes their entire team, which I have my awesome teammates here. And so you might come across something, let's say it's budget, and you're like, Dan, we know you don't do that. Yeah, right. Linda does, or some of the slides around student achievement, and yeah, Des does a lot of that. Or talking about attendance, you saw some areas of improvement there. So I do want to emphasize that this is really the work of a lot of people, not just me. I can't do all 8 of these things at all. So this really is about what the team does. All right. So so visionary district leadership is one of the standards. And so again, because I don't want to read every single slide here. So when we get to a standard, then I took 3 bullets, and this is me trying to synthesize what visionary leadership looks like. When you get the form from Crystal, I kind of synthesize these down to collaborative process with the board, diverse stakeholder input, and implements improvement plans and communicates progress. So that's how I synthesized visionary leadership. And so as we move through these, a lot of these you've seen before. This is me presenting evidence under visionary district leadership. So we talk about our theory of action. You saw me talk about at the beginning of the year, finishing strong, simplifying our action plans, and with plans that are emphasized on if the adults do, then the kids will. So throughout this is me trying to give evidence. So the next one, so we talked about integrated plan metrics, where these are the areas, these are our goals around regular attenders, 3rd grade math, and so on. So this is again, all evidence for you under visionary district leadership. another one of these examples would be the superintendent advisory work group, so. Which is related to the superintendent advisory work group for equitable experiences and outcomes, so it's a mouthful. And that's just an excerpt from the application that people complete to be part of that group, so. And next slide. So an example of implementing improvement plans would be our attendance team. So we've heard about that tonight, where not only did we have a plan, then we brought it back to continue to update the board on how we're doing on the areas where we're focusing areas of improvement. So that's standard number one. All right, standard number two, ethical and professional norms. Now, this is kind of an interesting one in terms of. I'll just tell you what I believe. You are either going to believe me to be ethical and professional, or you don't, and then we have other problems. So I did not provide evidence of that. You are hopefully either seeing that through my communication, through what I do. I did not even attempt to try to bring evidence of that to you, because that just felt weird. And so hopefully, if there are issues there, you're bringing them to my attention. All right, inclusive district culture. There's how I synthesize that. That's still quite a mouthful. But those are how I synthesize that particular standard. And we'll go to the next slide. So when we talk about really looking at opportunities and resources for the well-being of each student, that was one of the sub bullets on the previous slide. We're really looking at data to make sure, how do we compare to other people with all these different populations of students that we have? So part of this is how you ensure the well-being of every student, is when you look at how you're doing. Why don't we go to the next slide?
Dan, can I
Yeah.
just say something?
Yeah.
You know, this is the first time I've ever seen a graphic like, a graph like this with this kind of information comparing us to other school districts, the way you put this together. And it was, because I've been around a while, and it was very interesting to me.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know about Glenn.
kudos to Des for helping put some of this together. So the next slide, so now you've got some comparisons. So it's really important to say, so how are we doing in comparison to these other districts? And then sometimes people like to discredit data. And so when you can say, no, these districts are just like us, then you can kind of go, there's no reason why our students can't perform at these levels. So that's just, to me, when we talk about inclusive district culture, examining this kind of data is how we determine whether the well-being of students are getting better in our district. Next slide. And understanding it's a process, not a destination. So part of this is, so these are the works we are doing. I think you've seen this. I think, Des, have we shared this slide with them before?
No.
No, okay. So this is a little bit of an update on what we're doing. So we're really trying to focus on building the data literacy of our principals. So how do we look at data and make sense of it? That's a big focus of our work. We're trying to align our systems. Attendance teams is a perfect example of that. Implement consistent use of data for next school year. We're continuing to train and support on new materials and ongoing professional development for math instruction. All right. Fourth standard, instructional leadership and improvement. And these are the three areas that I synthesize those down into: instructional leadership, professional development, assessment, data, and analysis. Now, this is all information you've seen before. So this is really an example of assessment, data collection, and analysis. So these are all slides, and Linda, you can kind of keep on scrolling through these of data that I've shared with you that we are looking at to see how are we doing. And these are all related to our goals when we had to talk about third grade reading or eighth grade math or graduation rates or attendance. Those are all examples of that. So this is just me sharing evidence with you. All right. Do I need to slow down? All right. All right, number 5, communication and community relations is the 5th standard. And again, there's some sub bullets there that fall under that. Next slide. This is where I do get just a little bit more wordy and just trying to give you some examples of that. So communication and community relations, we've got youth truth, we've got frequent communication with staff and community. I will say it feels like this month has been a little bit, not as much from me to the community. And so Des and I started working, Des mostly, on a newsletter that's gonna go out, that's gonna be a little bit more encompassing, because I don't feel like I've been as communicative with the community this last month. We are working with WSD to review communication systems. We're improving, making improvements to the website. And I'm also personally just involved in regional and statewide advocate efforts for improving HR systems. There's a lot of school districts struggling with HR related supports, and that's just something that I enjoy doing and can give back into the greater state organizations related to HR systems. All right, effective organizational management is number 6, and there are the sub bullets to that. Next slide. So here's a lot of different changes we've made. So new evaluation framework for classified staff, new evaluation framework for non-rep staff. Those be our administrators and confidential staff, and possible revisions to the teacher evaluation system. So Des and I pitched an idea to UNME back in January. She met with them, with the reps from every building, very receptive. We're meeting with UNME again tomorrow to talk about bringing a new evaluation system into our teacher, because that's tied to their contract. So there's a little more steps to follow. We're really excited to bring an updated evaluation system to our for our teachers. We've revised the administrative contracts. We're still developing a staff handbook, a hiring handbook, and an ELD instructional framework. So trying to create a better infrastructure. You've seen this. This is, under that effective organizational management, as I love leadership development. And so this is just a sample from one of my presentations with our work with leadership teams. Is crucial conversations. One of the key pieces of leadership development is teaching people to have tough conversations. Because none of us like them, but the more we practice, the better we get. All right, standard number 7, effective financial management. This has one slide, and so here are some things that we've done to align budget to district priorities. That's one of the substandards, and so I just then, under that, said, here's some things we're doing. We're doing youth truth, we're gonna take stakeholder input, we're gonna take a look at our academic focus, and those things are going to lead us to a new strategic plan. Obviously, with a lot of stakeholder input. Managing district resources, obviously, we have a significant issue in reductions to align expenditures with revenue. So that's a big part of what you've heard the last few months, really for quite a while. And along with regular updates on the budget, thank you for listening. So, and last standard is policy governance and advocacy. And these are the kind of the sub bullets under there. I didn't provide any evidence. I think that, especially under the policy development piece, I think we've come a long way. We've got a good system in place. Diane rocks it and putting everything together for that. Makes my job 100 times easier. Putting all that together, outlines it really well for you, I hope. And we're up to date, we're staying up to date. Yeah. That was a mouthful. That was a lot. So.
Okay, hey Jenny, can I take the floor for a minute?
Rolling, so I'm just gonna let's go. Yeah. That's teamwork there. Yeah.
I think Crystal has a couple things she wants to.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, so you would have now received the email and feedback form to put into your inboxes if you check your school inboxes. One thing that I want to point out is I have some clarification points that if you are unsure about a question, you may skip it without answering, that there is no time limit. These are anonymous. and please only complete one. So I've wrote a pretty detailed instructions on the form. And for public meeting law, you do not reply all. And I will gather and we'll talk about the details of this at a executive session.
Great.
And let me, if you have any problems like access, just send me an email or a text and I'll check it out.
Good. All right,
Good.
was that it? All right. Any
Good. Well,
closing comments?
Merle?
Couple of things, Al, with the evaluation, this is a pre-evaluation, and we're going to get forms to give input. And I can
Yes.
ask questions or address some of these things, but one question right here at the last I wanted to ask, and that is on the policies, are those now up to date? Has OSBA put those in, so when we go on North Marion policies, is it the current ones there? Or do they
Yes,
have?
I actually just looked at all three of those policies, CBG, BCD, and CBA on our North Marion policy website, and they are up to date by the OSBA as of 11/18/2024.
I don't think the February ones may not be updated that you adopted 2 weeks ago. They may not be on the website, but I do know Crystal is totally right, that all
Most of them are.
most of them are.
Okay.
And you can see the date stamp on there,
Mhm.
on the policy. So,
I rest my case.
All right,
Any other
Dave?
questions about the feedback?
nope,
Okay,
okay,
Jenny, I'll hand it back to you. Thanks.
yeah, good to adjourn that at 6:46. Thank you.
Wow, Jenny, the meeting's faster than.
Right.
Get home, time for dinner.
Yeah, and I feel like I should go to a professional with you right now. They're like a little priest guy.
oh, yeah,
Father Dan.
yeah, Father Dan, yeah, there you go.
I almost started